It's me, Inlaying. I'm back again, and I just wanted to go over the second part of the same series here on inlaying flamenco guitar top with a Rosette, a commercial one by the way. And here's the little tool that I was describing from Lee Nielsen. It comes with several cutters, and I've got a really small, tiny, I think it's 3/32, about 2.5 millimeter chisel in there. And I've got it set for about 1.8 millimeters in depth. And I just wanted to show you folks how I use this little tiny miniature router to route out the cavity for the top. It's really not that difficult to do. It's pretty much the same techniques that you use with a small laminate trimmer. I basically start over here at the widest point. I'll divide it into 4 quadrants like this. Okay, and so from here I'll go with the grain all the way down to about here, the middle part, and then I'll come in from this side over here on the right hand side of the circle and come down this way. Then over here on the top, this quadrant here, I'll come this way, okay, and I'll cut the grain lines this way. And on the opposite side, I'll come from the widest part over here to here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. And another little tool I would like to show you is, this is a really old chisel. It's 45 years old. I bought it in Woodward's in Vancouver, British Columbia on 41st and Oak, one of my first tools. And it's basically a 2 millimeter, it was a double bevel chisel for carving, and I put a single bevel on it. It's a very steep angle. It's about a 15-degree angle. So it makes for a very, very sharp chisel. And I've got it super sharp. And basically all I'm using it for is there's a little parts over here on the Rosette top, I don't know if you can see them, in the trough that don't get sliced very well. And they're basically the little end pieces. So I'm just going to come in here and very, very carefully pull them out. And you got to be really careful because, as I said earlier, these pieces of Western red cedar are very delicate. I can understand why a lot of people would not want to work on it. It's probably much easier to do this very same job in spruce. And if you're working on spruce, good for you. It's unequally great tone wood, in my opinion. But I just like the sound of Western red cedar a lot, and I also like the sound of spruce. So basically, I just wanted to demonstrate the 2 other tools that I'll be using to cut the router, cut the inlay further down. And basically my target here, the overall thickness of this is 3.5 millimeters, roughly around. And the Rosette is about 1.8 millimeters. So I'm going to take this, you got to figure all these calculations before you start cutting. I'm going to take down this trough to roughly between 2.3 and 2.5 millimeters. So that way I'll have at least a 0.5 millimeter on top. And I'm going to cut the top down to about 2.7 millimeters. And this Rosette over here is approximately 1.8 millimeters in thickness. So be very, very cognizant of that. You want to make sure that you don't cut too low. You don't want to make sure you cut too high, because you want to give yourself enough room so that you can go over the top again, clean everything up really nicely, and have no lumps and bumps and creases and a lot of little anomalies in your top. So I'll just show you very briefly how I go about doing this, and I'll take the miniature router. This is from Lee Nielsen. It's a great tool. I really like it. It's also good for doing butt heel inlays and a lot of other little tiny jobs. I'll go over here and I'll start cutting over here from the widest part right here to the lowest part. There we go. We're getting small shavings here. And don't get too aggressive either. Just take very small cuts with it, and don't go ballistic with it. Keep cleaning yourself out as you go along, and slowly but surely you will get there. So, as I said earlier, your byword is take your time. If you do a much quicker job, you can do it again with the miniature routers or a Dremel or whatever you have in stock. But I would caution you that even if you're not going to do it by hand and you have a router, you score the outline, especially on woods like western red cedar and spruce, so that you don't have a lot of anomalies in the top, and you don't get a lot of little splitting out at the sides. So that's really critical, is score these lines, as I mentioned to you at the beginning of the first part of the video. And I'm just going to keep going down over here and working myself down further and further. Right now it's probably about, I'd say, 1.8 millimeters in depth. Let's have a quick spot check over here. That's 1.5. That's 1.4. It's never going to be consistent. 1.8. So I will clean up that afterwards on my last pass. I want to make sure that the bottom of the trough is as consistent as I possibly could get it in its depth. Okay? And the reason for that is if it's too unbalanced, in other words, if you've got 1.9 here, 2.5 here, 2.7 there, if it's all over the place, that's why I'm using a little router, then you're going to get, when you put glue in there, it's going to get very lumpy. Some people like to use a non-water-based glue in here, and that's a good idea in my opinion, because it doesn't raise the grain. And a couple of choices are epoxy, or with this product here, I've even used seam sealer contact cement. There's a whole host of glues you can use. But make sure if you use a water-based glue, when you're putting in your rosette, that you want to let it sit for at least a day, because it will shrink back. So pay attention to that, and especially pay attention to the depth. And here we go again. We'll start at the other quadrant over here on this side and start working our way down. From the widest part, there's not much to do over here. A few little sections here, down to the shallow part. And these parts, some of these small parts over here that I couldn't get, you can see them over here. You can go at them. They're very, very tiny. So remember, one bad slip over here and you can ruin this whole rosette. So please take your time while you're doing this. And if you do break it, you can take a little break, and curse a few times and just go back to it again. But try and stay calm. I would not do this kind of job on a day when you were agitated, because you will be very sorry down the road. So just take your time, and you will do a good job, and you will slowly get there little by little. I'm going to start working on the other quadrant. I'll turn the top around again, and I'll start from the widest point over here. I'll start going back again. Here's a little spot right over here, right around the edge that is not leveled. There's a very, very thin sliver of western red cedar. So I hope you enjoyed the video and showing how with just a few simple tools you can even make a small router like this yourself. Some people make them. There's videos on the web of making one of these miniature routers out of a piece of wood and some tool steel. So they're very handy, and I find them very useful for a lot of jobs. Thank you, and have fun making chips fly.